Thank you. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished chief guest of the day, the Secretary, Ministry of Water Resources, Mr. U.P. Singh, former Secretary, and now an eminent researcher, Dr. Shamal Sarkar, Dr. V.K. Garg, Dr. Anil Garg, Your Excellencies, and distinguished delegates. We're meeting today on a very sacred day, that's World Water Day. In fact, if there is anything that is highest in terms of priority for living, is water and air and land. In fact, our ancestors didn't worship any gods or idols or texts. They worshipped the elements of nature. Of subsequent centuries and millenniums. It has been amply indicated that there is no life without water. There has been a tremendous upsurge of public opinion and debate on the quality of air and clean air. And when we talk of the environment, we invariably talk of the air around us. But we seem to forget a very essential component of the environment, and that is water. Air you can purify by putting a purifier in your room or moderate its temperature. But water, once contaminated, is an extremely difficult problem to tackle, because the dispersal of that contamination is not as aggressive as the contamination of the air, and its use is also somewhat different from air. While air pervades the entire environment, maybe from across the poles, across the equator, and all other regions, the availability of fresh water is greatly limited to only very limited pockets around the world. In fact, barely 3%, as I was reading a figure, fresh water is available. Most of the other fresh water which we have is frozen across the North Pole and the South Pole, in the tundra regions. And seawater is there to see, SEE and not SEA, but only river water, fresh lake water, is the water that is available to us for drinking. When I began my civil service career in a state, I was posted in its desert portion, touching Rajasthan. And the prettiest pieces of architecture in the villages surrounding Rajasthan were the water wells, because that was the most sacred piece of architecture that was of relevance to every household. The water well was not only a source of drinking water, it was also a social club for women to assemble, chat, and then carry loads of water on their head across long distances. Such is the vital significance of water. But unfortunately, what have we done to each water tank? We talk of nature-based solutions, But in our mad race for urbanization, we have destroyed all those tanks and ponds which were storing water in the villages. There was a separate tank for drinking water, another tank for the animals to drink water, and a third tank for washing and other purposes. These age-old practices of segregation have been lost. These tanks in the rural areas have also been contaminated by water or runoff water, which carries pesticides and chemicals that is being used in the crops. Harmful poisons contaminating the water. The global situation of water is varying across country to country. But we in India, the audience essentially is from India today. It's a subject that the framers of the Constitution never realized the importance of. It was put in the state list, not even in the concurrent list like power or electricity. What came in the central list, where the central government, which was to ensure its writ across the country, was left with defense, issues like foreign affairs, finance, telecommunication, because very little was known of it that time, petroleum and oil, again, not much known of it that time. But I think that is somewhere where the constitution makers probably faltered. Because we have umpteen disputes which lie unresolved. Laws, riparian laws. Who is a riparian state? Recently, the Supreme Court has had opportunity to dwell on it and have talked about the ownership and proprietorship of water. I might say loud enough, since I am no longer in government, that the present government is a majority. Present government has its party in power in 21 states across the country. Now is the right time to amend the Constitution. These opportunities may not come again. Numerous disputes have remained unresolved for long. I, as the Principal Secretary for Water Resources, or Irrigation as was called in a state, had the privilege of taking a case right up to the Supreme Court, getting a judgment in favor of the state, which is lying unimplemented since the year 2005. Now, if the writ of the state cannot run even on the judgments of the highest court of the land, it is an extremely serious issue, and I think warrants urgent constitutional debate. I'm giving you a situation only of one country that I know of particularly. Similar situations must be there across the world. The future wars of the world, in all probability, like wars across agriculture fields, are going to be water wars. Water is too precious a subject to be left to the politics of the day. Water is given across the country, in many countries, in a totally unmeasured state. There's hardly any metering of water in the agriculture sector. And whatever metering is there in the urban areas also is quite unsatisfactory. The realization must come on a day like this that water is an extremely scarce commodity. It has now become an economic commodity. The business of selling water in bottles is probably one of the most profitable businesses. And yet we do not realize the amount of plastic that we ingest while drinking water from a plastic bottle, or the way it is stored in various plastic containers. In the run-up to World Water Days, we have a few articles, well-researched on the subject, but we tend to forget in the coming weeks. The idea of holding these events is to sensitize each one of us, particularly the younger generation, on the importance of water, which is as sacred as the defense of the country or as the clean air which we consider extremely important around us. Clean air in the environment has forced us to change the way we generate electricity and the way we use energy and fuels. But no such forceful movement has come across in the water sector. I think governance has gone amiss. I hope that people like Mr. U.P. Singh will convince the governments of the day that the time has come to take action before it is too late. We already spilt the water. Let's not be found amiss in trying to protect future generations from strife, war, and starvation. Thank you very much.